Welcome to the BackPageLead Vidcast, and we have with us today Tim Lane, BackPageLead columnist and doyen of commentary teams in Australia. Tim, welcome, and you're back from Delhi in one piece, and you're actually looking in rude health.
Yeah, in one piece, Charlie, which beats the hell out of the alternative that was being suggested before a whole lot of us went away. And I must pick you up on your use of the word doyen. You're throwing it around very lightly.
Not doyen.
Not doyen. Small d doyen.
Not self-proclaimed doyen. I'm sorry, I'm doing that on your behalf. Everything in good working order though, physically? You come back in...
All is well, yeah. Didn't see too many cases of people coming down with the sort of things you get reputedly when you're travelling around India. It was a great experience actually, and the games, may have got a mixed reaction, but as I wrote recently, I think if they can spark the imagination of young Indians, and we're talking here of a country with 1.2 billion people,
yep.
Well, maybe the Commonwealth Games are getting towards the end of the piece of string, but nevertheless, they might yet have served a useful purpose in 2010.
Well, we're unlikely to see AFL played at the Commonwealth Games in the short term, but they do seem to be dominating the sporting calendar for the other 11 months of the year. I mean, we've gone from the end of the AFL season to Trade Week, and then we've got the Kaspersky Cup in China, which your daughter Sam covered. We've got the International Rules Series in Ireland. It's just saturation coverage. It's wall-to-wall AFL, isn't it?
It is the power of football, isn't it? And it's not just our code in this country, but obviously the round ball game does it in countries where it dominates. Football games seem to have a power of galvanising the collective passion that other sports can't quite capture, and it works in their favour. Now, at times I'm critical of the AFL and its apparent desire to rule the world, as it were, but in this case I'm not. I mean, if they are able to keep a hold on the public imagination across most of the 12-month calendar, well, more power to them. And cricket clearly has been the other major sport in this country which has tended to have access to the non-footballing 6 months.
Yep.
And try as it may, with a sort of a scattergun approach with the various forms of the game that are played all over the world, and a couple of these football matches are being played in different and obscure parts of the world. Cricket can't quite seem to nail it, and I suppose you've got to ask the question why, and also ask whether there are better ways.
Yeah, well, Cricket Australia's made all sorts of attempts to make the game relevant in this country, and Test cricket is more vibrant in Australia than it is in most countries around the world, isn't it? What do you think, though, of this notion, this surprising situation where ahead of the Ashes series, the visiting nation, being England of course, looks like it's going to have a better preparation for the Ashes in terms of being acclimatised to the local conditions than in fact the host nation? They play 3 first-class matches, 4-day games, while Australia's playing 1 day against Sri Lanka and I think a 2020 as well.
Well, I can't see that it makes any sense in terms of preparing our team for what is going to be a very difficult series to win. And this is a real crossroads for Ricky Ponting and his team. I mean, it could be the end of the line for Ponting if he loses this. And if the team loses it, well, we're relegated even further. But I don't think it makes any marketing sense either. I'd have thought that if we were playing some really good combative 4-day domestic cricket at the moment in the lead up to the first test, just a few weeks away, the public imagination would be captured far more effectively than by inconsequential short games being played which bear no relationship to the selection of the team and to what is to follow in this much awaited series. I mean, we've lost 2 of the last 3 Ashes series, and whereas we won them back in 06-07, we did it with a full strength team that was on the rebound and ready to absolutely monster England. This time around we're not in such a fortunate position, and it's an exciting prospect in competitive terms. But I think it'd be a lot more exciting if we were watching the contenders for a berth in the Australian team really playing for their futures right now. And we're not seeing that. And as Malcolm Knox wrote on BackPageLead recently, we don't see many, if any of them, at all in the domestic competition. And perhaps this does explain, as Malcolm's suggesting, where we've gone wrong in recent years. We championed the fact that we had the best domestic competition, the one that most resembled the combat of Test cricket anywhere in the world. And basically, we've given up that advantage because our best don't play there, sometimes by their own choosing, sometimes because they're not even allowed to by their own administrators.
But the series against India could have been a classic on its own too, but it was a 2-test series, and that was sort of nipped in the bud. So we've kind of compromised that, and it compromised the preparation for the summer as well. So we're almost getting the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. I mean, if we regard a test series against India as the nearest thing to an Ashes series, and some would say it's even better and harder to win, particularly when it's played in India, why have them jammed up against each other? Yeah. Why not separate them and actually play them as genuine, long, full-term series where a true test is applied? We came away from that series in India not knowing whether Australia was capable of fighting back or whether basically it had been broken in the second test. It put itself into a strong position in both tests, managed to lose them both. It would have been fascinating to see how Ponting's team performed over a couple more tests, but we'll never know how in 2010 at least, at that stage of their development, they might have handled that.
Australia's still favourites for the Ashes, and I don't know at this early stage, Tim, whether you're prepared to nominate a winner, but do you think that favouritism is deserved?
I don't think it is. Australia don't lose often at home, that we know, but we also know that they're not unbeatable anymore on their own dunghill. South Africa got us a couple of summers ago, and I think it's distinctly possible that England could win this. I reckon it's, in the immortal words of Peter Landy a few years ago, even money each of two.
Very good. Well, let's move a bit closer to home and the all-pervasive, all-conquering AFL. Let's talk about the Indigenous Code. News from Western Australia through today, or yesterday, is that one of the players involved in the Waffle Grand Final from Swan Districts has tested positive for Sudafed, which is a stimulant, I think. What's your reading about that in terms of, in the context of a team? Is that something a whole team should be punished for, do you think, for one miscreant?
Yeah, well, it is interesting, isn't it? Swan Districts won the flag, and a player has returned a positive A sample. Let's assume the B sample is positive. His name hasn't been disclosed, so we can do that in speaking about the matter hypothetically. And you then have a test case for how football deals with a situation in which a premier team has someone who has violated the performance-enhancing drug code. Such a violation cost the women's 100-metre gold medalist in Delhi, or the second across the line after Sally Pearson, a gold medal that she was going to be presented with. In relay running events, medals have been stripped, although they also have been handed back by courts of sporting arbitration. So these matters are still to be seriously determined in a way that absolutely defines what should happen. Now, here we have a sport with a 22-person team, not a 4-person team. One individual like Marion Jones could get a team across the line in a 4-person relay team. In football, could they? Well, they could. I mean, it might be the Norm Smith medalist in an AFL Grand Final who kicked 8 or 9 goals in the big one. How do you deal with that? I'm not absolutely sure. I don't think you can decide according to the merits of an individual case. I think a decision has to be made in an overall sense, and this is one, I reckon, certainly for the WAFL, but for the AFL to have a very serious look at. I don't imagine Swan districts are going to be stripped of their